So I think some individuals who are teenagers who really don't understand consequences well experiences violence in the video games, and they can think, oh well, there's no consequences, they can engage in this in real life.
This conflict originally started around 1976 when the company Excite released the game called Death Race into arcades. This game was considered to be violent and many parents were disturbed. Since this game was so controversial, the game ended up disappearing. There were many other games that were released, but they would soon after debate. In 1983, when the game The Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out, the game was also very controversial, but it wasn't until 1992 when people focused more on the new violent video games that came out, like Mortal Kombat and Night Trap. The IDSA, also known as Interactive Digital Software Association, was in charge of rating video games before they were sold in stores. Educators, parents, and child development experts were all a part of this association. The people who created the video games were given surveys about what the video game should contain. Depending on what they wanted to see, they were shown some parts of the selected video games to give a final rating. Then they could be put in stores. The IDSA turned into the ESRB because it was a more effective rating system. The ESRB is a better rating system because they show what each game should contain and what they are rated. The Entertainment Software Rating Board, also known as the ESRB, has been around for over 10 years now. The way this system works is that the game companies submit a paper in which they write about the content and gameplay, describing it in detail. They also have to include a video showing the worst and most offensive scene in the video game. The people evaluating these games are video gamers and people who don't play video games. Together, they all compare and share thoughts about the game, and then they finally make a decision on what the rating should be. The strongest rating is AO, meaning adults only, which is rarely handed out. This rating was never seen until the game Grand Theft Auto San Andreas came out in the markets. This series of games began back in 1998. The Hot Coffee mod in San Andreas allowed minors to have access to mini-games which included sex and other violent actions. The M-rated video games weren't as bad as the AO ratings because the content was less inappropriate.
I see the ratings and I know that it's an industry-run group, and I think the ratings do say what's in the box. I think the problem is the enforcement. It's the same thing with R-rated movies. I mean, the movie company has an advantage to let you in if you're under 18 because they make money. And I think the same thing happens with game system. There's been a lot of research recently that like Walmart and stuff will sell kids underage. So I think it all comes down to enforcement and parental. Like, you can't totally rely on the government. I mean, the parents should not be buying their kids violent games that, when they're young, and parents do it all the time. And I think that's the problem. Like, you can't force people to be good parents, and so I think parents need to take responsibility also.
One of the main reasons why teenagers become aggressive is because they play too many violent video games, making them addicted. Studies have shown that 75% of teenagers who play reported that they play M-rated games. Teenagers who play violent video games are most likely to be involved in a fight, according to the news channel Reuters. Some studies also show that boys who play teen or mature-rated games for a minimum of 40 minutes a day may witness over 180 incidents of aggression per day, or 5,400 incidents per month.
Well, I don't think necessarily that the violence in the video games affects the kids. I think it's kind of more the kids pushing it over the limit. Like if the kids grow up in a ghetto environment and plays bad video games, then he's more likely to do violent things. But let's say the kid doesn't live in a violent setting and plays violent video games, he might not do those violent things.
It's violent video games and movies. I'm a pretty open-minded, kind of liberal parent, but that's just, I don't see any good coming from either of those two things.
I see it more as a body art form.
My mom's always like, Jan, go get your homework done and get your priorities set straight before you wander off and go play Black Ops.
I'd rather be playing my Xbox than doing my Alex, but sometimes it just becomes a matter of doing what I have to do rather than what I want to do. It's not a matter of the age of the person, but the maturity of the person.
Some surveys also showed that the majority of the teenagers who play video games admitted that their parents do not impose a time limit on the amount of hours that they're supposed to be playing. The average child from age 8 to 12 plays around 13 hours of video games per week. On the other hand, teenagers from age 13 to 18 play 14 hours of video games per week. Studies have showed that the more the teenagers play violent video games, the more addicted they become. 9% of child gamers are addicted to playing violent video games in a pathological or clinical way.
I don't know if that's really healthy for the individual, because rather than going out and socializing, making friends, meeting boyfriends and girlfriends, they're sitting home alone playing video games with people all across the country through headphones. So I think it really damages someone's social development. In some cases, I think it's fine if people play them a little bit here and there for some fun, but if this becomes something that's just what they do, it really disrupts their social development. And I think some of the negative stereotypes hurt them even further, because then they're seen as a loner, or, some high schools are seen like as quote like a loser, for example, and that further kind of isolates them from their peers. So I think that's pretty damaging. And it makes them not exercise.
I personally feel that it depends on who plays video games and what they take from it.
There are a lot of moderate gamers who are just doing it to relax on the weekends because they don't have anything to do or because it's fun for them. Gaming is really social, especially with all the new communications equipment that we have now, and you can talk to your friends.
A study performed in 2007 reported that 45% of boys that play violent video games said that they play it because it helps them release their anger, and 62% of boys said that they play violent video games because it helps them relax. People would rather be violent virtually than physically harm anyone. The consequences of their violent actions is only losing a battle in a game rather than killing someone and going to jail.
There has been scientific pros towards violent video games, like better tolerance of aggression, more patience, and in the case of first-person shooters, armor these games actually tend to up reflex times and awareness.
There has been a lot of research that video games in and of themselves can be positive. Like, they help you problem solve because you enter into a world that you don't know the rules. Like, you start playing the game and you don't know how to jump, you don't know how to run, you don't know how to explore the world. So games help you learn how to get into a new environment and figure out what the rules are and figure out how to manipulate the rules to get the results you want. There's also been a lot of research on games like World of Warcraft that it helps people learn how to deal with, like, because there's like guilds and groups of people who play together, and you have to learn to play together, you have to learn how to work across different time zones, how to organize at an event at the right time. So there are a lot of positive aspects of video games, but I don't think the violence in video games has any particular positive thing other than people like playing them, which is good, but I don't like the impact of that.
They aren't fun because they're violent. They're fun because it's sort of the emotion that you get from playing that is this adrenaline sort of, that there's always something going on. It's never boring.
I think that some people, it gives them a chance to do something in this virtual environment you can't do in reality without the consequences.
If the government does discontinue minors being able to play violent video games, teenagers can still use the internet to play violent video games, and they can act out violently to get attention. If the Supreme Court bans violent video games, it doesn't necessarily mean that the people will stop trying to find ways to get to those violent video games. Drugs are illegal, but people still find ways to get to them and sell them. Minors could still go online and play violent video games illegally because they enjoy video games so much that they will do whatever they can to get them.
Just like with drugs. Drugs are legal, people still get their hands on them. Same thing can happen with these kinds of video games if they're banned.
The enjoyment that I get out of video games is being with my friends and the competitive aspect of video games. I don't play video games during the week, I focus on school during the week.
I have some kind of discipline when I play video games. When I lose a match, I have to do like 15 push-ups just to stay active because I'm not going to sit on my butt all day and play a video game. I have to actually do something.
I think the main problem with them is in the video game, when violence happens, there's really no consequence. But when it comes to minors, we need to protect them because you guys may know already, your brain is not fully functional until you're around 19, 20 years of age. There's that frontal part of your brain called the frontal lobe that doesn't really mature. And that's the part of your brain that helps you understand consequences and things like that. If it's not really mature, I think we need to protect those individuals until their brain really is able to understand consequences of their actions. So no, I think that the First Amendment shouldn't apply to minors, especially in this case.
I believe it for an adult, but for children, I think we have to make some changes.
Yeah.
Because it's extreme violence, and some children don't check out. So I would have to say for children, I think that would apply.
There was a dramatic decline in murder and violence between 1993 and 2000, while the sale and distribution increased. Violent video games help teenagers to express their feelings without hurting anybody. Many people judge video games and say that those only increase aggression in teenagers. However, many people do focus on the environment that the kid grew up in. How many people watch TV? Haven't they noticed all of the crimes and wars that are going on around the world? What about the music? Haven't they heard all of the offensive lyrics that they say? How many people do really see that there's a problem, and it's not in video games, that the problem is where the kid grew up in or the people around them? In society, there's violence everywhere, so why target video games? Just because some teenagers are addicted to playing violent video games doesn't mean that they act aggressively because of it. The overall point is, if you're going to blame something on aggressive behavior from teenagers, blame it all on the violent media.
Oh, record. X. You got murked.
No, I didn't. Damn straight.
Where did they come from?
Hold it, just hold it. So much cooler when you just hold it.
I
will murk you all.
Yeah, you all got bile everywhere. Oh my god, yes.
We better.
First wave tossed over, and all of a sudden,
Damn straight.
Oh no, reloading.
I'm getting this today.
How did you survive? Was that a zombie dog?
Do you think that violent video games affect teenagers' behavior?